There is a minimum age limit of 21 years, but there is no maximum age limit. So there is no formal retirement age. It very much depends on the individual person. And what we find is a lot of people who are perhaps in their 40s and 50s, maybe their own children are moving out, growing up, or maybe they're taking a career change, they'll have a lot of life experience, and that brings an extra confidence. So we do have a lot of carers who become foster carers for the first time in their 40s, 50s, and even beyond. What's really important is what's right for you as an individual. You do need to be in good enough health, of course, to be able to care for a child, but actually people do have medical conditions and health conditions, and that doesn't prevent them from being foster carers. Like I say, you need to look at the individual circumstances and what that means for you as a person and as an individual. You can foster if you have a disability, and it's a little bit like a medical condition. What we'd want to understand is how that disability impacts on your everyday life and whether you are still able to meet the needs of a child. But we would work with you around all of that. And in fact, if you have a disability, you will have a great understanding of the impact that that disability might have, and you could actually offer a great deal to a child because of your own life experiences. In order to look after a Darlington child, you would need to be within a reasonable travelling distance of Darlington. And that's because a lot of the meetings for the child will take place in and around Darlington area, but also the child would need to access school and possibly medical appointments, etc. And their school is likely to be in Darlington. We do encourage our foster carers to assist with the transport. Usually they do all of the transport to and from school, so it needs to be within a reasonable travelling distance. But again, we would want to talk to you if you lived outside of Darlington and you were interested in being a foster carer. We would help you work around the logistics of how that could be managed appropriately. The other thing to consider, as well as school and medical appointments, would be any contact that the child had with their own birth family, because that's very important that we encourage that, and the child would usually need to get to a location in and around the Darlington area for their contact. But again, talk to us about that. Yes, you can foster if you have your own children. We would look at the ages that your children were, and then we would discuss with you what age of looked after child would best suit your family, because your own children, of course, have to be a priority, and we don't want to cause them any upset, distress, etc. if you became a foster carer. So we would usually say that any child you looked after would have to be either a full 2 years younger than your youngest child or a full 2 years older than your child. But again, we would want to talk you through all of that. You certainly can foster if you're not married, and in fact we encourage people with all sorts of relationship status to make inquiries about fostering. You can certainly be married, you can be single, you could be in a same-sex relationship. Speak to us, don't be put off by your circumstances. Come and talk to us about fostering. We need people from all walks of life. There are certain criminal convictions that would exclude you from being considered as a foster carer, and that would be some offences in relation to children and some sexual offences. It's quite complicated, and so we would welcome you discussing that with us. There are lots of other convictions that we would still be able to consider you as a foster carer. For example, perhaps you might have had a minor misdemeanour in your youth, and you have learned from that experience and you've moved on. And what's important is what you learned from what happened and how you would ensure that that never happened again. We do have some rules in relation to smoking which are based on best practice from the General Medical Council and Core and BAF, which is a sort of national organisation that supports fostering and adoption. So you cannot foster a baby or any child under the age of 5 years old if you smoke. But we would be encouraging you to look at cessation, smoking cessation. And the other thing to note is that we do take very seriously what's called passive smoking, because the medical research does indicate that if a child's in the vicinity of cigarette smoke, it is going to have an effect on them. But again, we would want to talk to you about that. You're not automatically ruled out, but you will be ruled out for children under the age of 5 and for certain children who have medical conditions that would mean that they're even more susceptible to the negative impact of cigarette smoke. If you work full-time, we would like to talk to you about your individual circumstances, because full-time work means lots of different things, and it might be that you still do have the time to meet the needs of a child. What we would have to look at is, are you flexible enough to be able to respond to all the child's needs? For example, you'll be attending meetings during office hours on occasions about the child and their development, so you would need to have the flexibility within your employment to be able to do that. And things like school holidays, you'd need to make sure that you had arrangements in place so that child's needs could be met while you are at work. But do talk to us about that. You can foster if you're unemployed. Obviously, you do need to have some level of stability. You need to have a home, which could be rented or it could be your own home, and you need to be able to maintain that home. And that's really important, because obviously we need our children to have a secure base, and you need to be able to meet their needs within that. But yes, you can certainly be unemployed.